They are not ignoring you. They are responding to the version of you you've been believing yourself to be. The moment you change your inner story, everything changes. After this shift, your specific person will feel your energy so deeply, so irresistibly that staying away will no longer feel natural to them. What if the love you desire is already yours, waiting only for your assumption to catch up? Neville Goddard taught that imagination creates reality, and the version of you who is already loved, chosen, and unforgettable exists right now. In this video, you'll discover the inner shifts that magnetize your specific person back into your reality with unstoppable emotional force. You must understand something that changes everything in relationships. The moment you begin chasing another person, you unconsciously declare that they are greater than you, more powerful than you, more important than you. And the world faithfully reflects that belief right back to you. The more you run after love, the more love appears to run from you. Not because you are unworthy, but because you have accepted the identity of someone trying to obtain what they believe they do not already possess. You cannot beg for what is already yours in consciousness. Look carefully at your thoughts throughout the day. Observe how often you check for movement, wait for messages, replay old conversations, wonder what they are feeling, or fear they may forget you. Every one of those acts seems harmless, yet each one carries an assumption. And the assumption underneath all of it is this: I do not yet have the love I desire. That assumption is what creates distance. You think you are reacting to reality, but in truth, reality is reacting to you. The person who is truly loved does not wake up terrified of abandonment. They do not spend hours questioning their value. They do not obsessively seek reassurance. Why? Because they already feel secure within themselves. They already occupy the state of being chosen. And this is where your transformation begins. You must stop trying to get love and start becoming the version of yourself who naturally experiences it. Feel the difference. One energy says, please choose me. The other says, of course I am chosen. One chases, the other attracts. One fears loss, the other expects devotion. And the world always responds to expectation. You have spent so much time trying to manipulate the outer world when the real power has always been within your own consciousness. You think another person has free rein over your emotional state, but no one can consistently reflect back to you what you are not first affirming within yourself. If you assume you are unforgettable, people begin to experience you that way. If you assume you are deeply valued, people begin treating you with greater care. If you assume you are magnetic, desired, and irreplaceable, your presence begins to affect others without effort, not through force, not through control, but through the silent authority of your self-concept. So stop asking, how do I make them come back? Ask instead, who would I be if I already knew they adored me? Would you still feel anxious every hour? Would you still stalk the past? Would you still search for signs? No, you would feel calm, certain, secure. There would be a quiet confidence within you, because the desire would already feel natural to your identity. That is the state you must enter. Do not underestimate this. Your inner state is not fantasy. It is the creative power shaping every interaction, every conversation, every emotional response you receive from others. People can feel what you silently believe about yourself. When you walk into a room carrying the energy of need, others unconsciously feel pressure. But when you embody fullness within yourself, there is a magnetism that requires no effort. You become emotionally powerful because you are no longer seeking permission to feel worthy. You have already decided you are. And suddenly everything changes. You stop overanalyzing delayed messages. You stop fearing temporary silence. You stop interpreting every circumstance as rejection. Because your confidence no longer comes from appearances. It comes from identity. You know who you are. You are not someone waiting to be loved. You are someone who naturally inspires love. You are not someone trying to hold on to another person. You are someone whose energy is deeply felt, deeply remembered, and deeply desired. The moment you fully accept that within yourself, the chase ends naturally. You no longer need to force movement because your entire being begins radiating certainty. And certainty has a strange effect on people. It pulls them in. It lingers in their mind. It makes them feel something they cannot fully explain. because the energy of someone who knows their worth is unforgettable. You must stop waiting for the outer world to give you permission to feel loved. That is the mistake almost everyone makes. They say, when they call me, I will feel secure. When they return, I will finally feel chosen. When they show me affection, then I will believe I am worthy. But that way of living keeps love forever outside of you, always one step away, always dependent on circumstances. You are not meant to react to love. You are meant to generate it from within. The feeling must come first. This is the secret most people overlook. They try to force results without changing their inner state. They repeat affirmations mechanically while secretly feeling rejected inside. They visualize for a moment, then spend the rest of the day worrying, doubting, checking, fearing. But your dominant feeling is what shapes your reality. Not the words you occasionally repeat, but the emotional atmosphere you consistently live in. So I ask you now, what would it feel like if you were already deeply loved? Pause for a moment and truly enter that feeling. How would you wake up in the morning if you knew you were adored? How would you carry yourself if you knew your specific person thought about you constantly? Would there be panic in your chest? Would there be fear in your mind? No, there would be peace. There would be confidence. There would be a quiet certainty that you matter deeply to someone. That feeling is the state you must claim. Not tomorrow, not when evidence appears. Now, because consciousness does not wait for permission from the physical world. It creates the physical world from what you consistently assume and emotionally accept as true. You must begin living inwardly as the person who is already cherished. Feel the naturalness of being loved. Feel the comfort of knowing you are important. Feel the warmth of being wanted. Do not force it. Do not strain. Simply occupy the state gently and repeatedly until it begins to feel familiar. Most people are addicted to longing because longing feels active. They think missing someone intensely means they care deeply. But longing only reinforces separation. You cannot continue identifying as someone abandoned and expect to experience devotion. The state must change first. You must become emotionally acquainted with fulfillment before it appears physically. And this is where imagination becomes sacred. Close your eyes and create a simple scene that implies your desire is already real. Hear their voice telling you how much they missed you. Feel their arms around you. Imagine them looking at you with love and certainty, not as something you hope will happen one day, but as something happening now within consciousness. Your imagination is not meaningless fantasy. It is the preview of reality forming itself around your assumptions. The outer world is delayed. That is why so many people quit too soon. They look for immediate evidence, and when they do not see it, they fall back into fear. But if you remain faithful to the feeling of being loved, reality has no choice but to rearrange itself accordingly. Do you understand how powerful this is? A person who truly feels loved moves differently. They smile differently. They speak differently. Their energy softens. Their mind relaxes. There is no desperation in them because they are no longer emotionally starving. They are inwardly fulfilled, and fulfillment is magnetic. People are naturally drawn toward those who radiate emotional completeness because that energy feels safe, powerful, and attractive. Your specific person can feel the shift, even if they cannot explain it logically. Something about you begins pulling at their mind, their emotions, their attention. Not because you forced them, because you changed your state. You stopped identifying with rejection and started identifying with love. You stopped asking, why am I not chosen? And started feeling, of course I am loved. And the moment that feeling becomes natural within you, the outer world begins reflecting it with astonishing accuracy. Everything in your outer world is responding to the concept you hold of yourself. Not sometimes, not occasionally, always. The relationships you experience, the treatment you receive, the attention you attract, the love you allow into your life, all of it is filtered through one thing: who you believe you are. Most people spend years trying to change others while never realizing the real issue lives within their own identity. They ask, why do people leave me? Why am I ignored? Why do I always feel rejected? But they never stop long enough to ask the deeper question: what must I believe about myself to keep experiencing this pattern? Because no experience can persist without your unconscious consent. If deep inside you believe you are difficult to love, life will continuously bring you evidence to support that belief. If you secretly feel unworthy, forgotten, or second best, the world will mirror that assumption with frightening accuracy. Not to punish you, but to reveal to you the state you are occupying. The outer world is not your enemy. It is your reflection. Look back at your relationships carefully. You will notice something extraordinary. Every painful pattern began long before the other person appeared. The fear was already there. The insecurity was already there. The expectation of abandonment was already alive within you. And because consciousness expresses itself outwardly, reality faithfully acted it out. That is why changing circumstances without changing self never lasts. You may get temporary movement, temporary affection, temporary reassurance, but if your self-concept remains wounded, fearful and insecure, you will eventually recreate the same pain in a different form. This is why you must transform the way you see yourself, not superficially, not just repeating empty affirmations while secretly doubting yourself. You must genuinely begin accepting a new identity. You must start seeing yourself as someone naturally chosen, valued, pursued, and loved. The moment that identity becomes dominant within you, your world begins reorganizing around it. Do you know why some people seem effortlessly magnetic? It is not because they are perfect. It is because they expect to be valued. Their inner assumptions create an energy of certainty. They walk into a room already believing they matter. They do not beg for significance because they already feel significant within themselves, and people respond to that energy automatically. Meanwhile, someone else may be beautiful, intelligent, and kind, yet constantly overlooked because deep down they carry the assumption, "I'm not enough." You cannot hide self-concept from reality. Reality hears what your subconscious believes, even when your words say something different. So if you want your specific person to see you differently, you must first see yourself differently. Stop identifying as the person who was hurt. Stop repeating the story of rejection. Stop introducing yourself mentally as someone abandoned or unwanted. That version of you belongs to the past unless you continue feeding it with attention. Start create a new inner identity. Begin saying to yourself, "I am unforgettable. I am deeply desired. I am always prioritized. I naturally inspire loyalty, affection, and commitment." At first, the mind may resist. The old identity may fight back because it has been repeated for years. But persistence reshapes consciousness. What feels unnatural today becomes natural tomorrow if you continue occupying the state. And once the new self-concept feels real, your reality cannot remain the same. Your specific person begins responding differently. Conversations shift, energy changes, attention increases. Not because you manipulated anyone, but because people can only mirror the version of you that you consistently embody. The world does not decide your value, you do. And once you truly accept your worth internally, you stop tolerating crumbs emotionally. You stop chasing validation. You stop fearing silence. There is a calm authority that begins growing inside you because your identity is no longer dependent on temporary circumstances. You understand that love is not something you earn through struggle. It is something you allow by accepting yourself as worthy of receiving it. And when your self-concept finally changes, you no longer feel like someone hoping to be chosen someday. You feel like the person who naturally becomes unforgettable in the minds and hearts of others. One of the greatest mistakes you can make is allowing the present moment to dictate what you believe is possible. Most people look at current circumstances as if they are final, permanent, and absolute. They check their phone, see no message, and immediately assume rejection. They notice distance, silence, or delay, and within seconds they abandon the reality they were trying to create. But listen carefully. The outer world is not the truth of who you are. It is only the echo of what you previously believed. What you see today is yesterday's consciousness made visible. And if you continue reacting emotionally to appearances, you keep recreating the same reality over and over again. This is why so many people remain trapped. They say they desire love, but they constantly give their attention to everything that suggests the absence of it. They affirm for 5 minutes, then spend the rest of the day analyzing silence, fearing abandonment, checking social media, and searching for evidence that something is wrong. Do you see what is happening? Their faith is not in the unseen reality they desire. Their faith is in appearances. And whatever you emotionally trust becomes your experience. You must learn to stop worshipping the evidence of your senses. The physical world is delayed. It reflects old assumptions, not your new ones immediately. That is why persistence is so important. If you plant a seed in the ground today, you do not dig it up tomorrow demanding proof that it is growing. You understand there is movement taking place beneath the surface long before anything becomes visible. Creation works the same way. The moment you accept a new state within yourself, reality begins rearranging. But because you cannot yet see the movement physically, the mind becomes afraid. It wants immediate confirmation. It wants proof. It wants reassurance. And this is the exact moment most people sabotage themselves. They return to reacting. They say, nothing is happening. But something is always happening. The unseen always precedes the seen. You must become disciplined enough to remain faithful to your inner assumption, even when the outer world temporarily contradicts it. If there is silence, remain faithful. If there is distance, remain faithful. If circumstances appear impossible, remain faithful. Because the power is not in reacting to reality. The power is in selecting reality. Do not ask the world for permission to believe in your desire. Decide inwardly that what you seek is already unfolding. Carry yourself with a quiet certainty that movement is happening whether you can physically detect it or not. Most people think manifestation requires constant effort, but the deeper truth is that it requires inner stability. Can you remain emotionally grounded even when appearances test you? Can you hold the assumption of love while the outer world still reflects old fears? That is mastery. The person who panics every time circumstances shift is still being controlled by the world outside them. But the person who remains calm, certain, and inwardly secure begins controlling reality from within. You must stop allowing temporary moments to define permanent beliefs. One delayed message means nothing. One bad day means nothing. One moment of silence means nothing. Why? Because circumstances are always changing. They are fluid. They are shadows. They are not fixed unless you continuously give them emotional life through fear and attention. The moment you stop reacting, you interrupt the cycle. You stop feeding the old reality, and something extraordinary begins to happen. You become emotionally free. Instead of waking up anxious, searching for signs, and obsessing over outcomes, you begin living from inner knowing. You understand that reality must eventually mirror your dominant state, not because of luck, not because of chance, but because consciousness is the source of all experience. So when fear appears, do not bow to it. When appearances challenge you, do not surrender your new identity. Return inwardly to the feeling of being loved, chosen, and desired, again and again, not because you are trying to force reality, but because you understand that the outer world has no choice except to eventually conform to the state you consistently occupy. And the moment you truly stop reacting to current circumstances, circumstances lose their power to control your future. You must begin using your imagination differently. Most people use imagination against themselves every single day without realizing it. They imagine being ignored. They imagine worst-case scenarios. They replay painful memories, arguments, silence, rejection. And then they wonder why the same experiences continue repeating in their reality. But imagination is not meant to imprison you in fear. It is meant to liberate you into creation. Everything begins in consciousness first. Every relationship, every conversation, every emotional connection is born inwardly before it appears outwardly. So if you want to experience your specific person feeling irresistibly drawn to you, you must first experience it within your imagination as though it is happening now. Not someday, not eventually, now. Close your eyes for a moment and feel this deeply. Imagine them thinking about you during the quiet moments of their day. Imagine your name naturally entering their mind. Imagine them smiling without understanding why they suddenly feel connected to you again. Feel the reality of them emotionally pulled toward your presence. Do not watch this scene as an outsider. Enter it. Experience it. Hear their voice. Feel their attention. Sense the emotional warmth between you as though it is already a living reality. This is not foolish fantasy. This is spiritual creation. The world you experience externally is always shaped by the images and feelings you repeatedly accept internally. What you consistently imagine with feeling becomes impressed upon consciousness, and once impressed, it must express itself in form. That is why emotion matters so deeply. Mechanical visualization without feeling has little power. But when you truly feel the naturalness of being wanted, remembered, desired, and chosen, something begins changing within you. Your nervous system relaxes. Your energy softens. Your thoughts become aligned with fulfillment instead of longing. And that inner shift is what begins influencing reality. Most people imagine from desperation. They visualize while secretly aware that they do not currently have what they want. Their energy says, I hope this happens. But hope still implies separation. Hope still places the desire in the future. You must imagine from ownership, from certainty, from already being the person they cannot stop thinking about. There is a vast difference between imagining someone loves you and knowing inwardly they already do. One creates longing, the other creates embodiment. Feel what it would be like if their affection was already natural, if hearing from them was expected, if their emotional connection to you was undeniable. Let the experience become so vivid within you that it begins to feel familiar, because familiarity is powerful. The subconscious accepts what feels natural, not what feels forced. So stop trying to convince yourself. Instead, gently return to the feeling again and again until it becomes emotionally comfortable to believe you are deeply desired. Imagine them missing your energy. Imagine them feeling pulled to reach out. Imagine them replaying conversations with you in their mind. Imagine them feeling an emotional closeness they cannot explain. Not because you are controlling them, but because consciousness itself is interconnected. The state you occupy influences the reality you experience. And when you persist in the assumption that your connection is strong, meaningful, and magnetic, reality begins arranging circumstances to reflect that belief. This is why you must protect your imagination carefully. Do not use it to create fear. Do not rehearse rejection mentally. Do not repeatedly visualize loss and then expect love to appear. Your imagination is the womb of reality. What you repeatedly conceive there eventually takes form. So each night, before sleep, return to the feeling of already being loved. Feel them close to you. Feel the emotional certainty of mutual connection. Let the scene feel simple and natural. There is no need to force intensity. What matters is the feeling of reality. Because the subconscious responds to what feels real, and over time the imagined state begins hardening into fact. Thoughts shift, circumstances shift, energy shifts. The connection deepens in ways that seem almost impossible from the perspective of the old reality. All because you dared to imagine not from fear, but from fulfillment. You cannot step into a new reality while emotionally clinging to the old one. That is the struggle so many people face. They say they want love, connection, reconciliation. Yet internally they continue repeating the same painful identity every single day. They replay old conversations. They relive rejection. They tell the story of how things fell apart, how they were hurt, how they were abandoned. And without realizing it, they keep resurrecting the very reality they wish to escape. The past survives only through your attention. Understand this clearly. Your old story has no power except the power you continue giving it. The moment you stop identifying with it emotionally, it begins fading from your reality. But most people keep feeding it through memory, emotion, and repetition. They introduce themselves mentally through pain. Even when they try to manifest something new, they secretly remain loyal to the identity of the wounded version of themselves. You must stop doing this. You are not meant to carry yesterday's suffering into tomorrow's creation. Every time you repeat the old story, you reinforce it within consciousness. You remind yourself of separation. You remind yourself of heartbreak. And because consciousness expresses what is impressed upon it, reality continues echoing those assumptions back to you. This is why letting go is not about forgetting someone. It is about releasing identification with the version of yourself who suffered. There is a version of you who feels abandoned. There is a version of you who doubts love. There is a version of you who expects disappointment. But there is also a version of you who feels chosen effortlessly. A version of you who feels secure. adored, prioritized, unforgettable. Which version will you continue feeding? Because whichever identity you emotionally sustain becomes your experience. You cannot continuously say, I was rejected, and simultaneously expect to feel deeply desired. The mind cannot occupy two opposing states at once. One must dominate, so stop narrating your pain. Stop telling the same story internally. Stop saying, they hurt me. Stop saying, nothing ever works out for me. Stop saying, I always get abandoned. Those statements are not harmless thoughts. They are creative commands. They shape the identity you continue embodying, and the world always mirrors identity. If you truly desire change, then a new story must begin within you now. Not when circumstances improve, not when the other person apologizes. Now begin telling a different story inwardly. I am deeply loved. I am always valued. Our connection is healing beautifully. I am unforgettable to the people I love. At first your mind may resist because it has become addicted to the familiarity of the old narrative. Pain can become strangely comfortable when repeated long enough. But comfort does not mean truth. It simply means repetition. And repetition can be changed. This is why inner conversations matter so much. Observe how you speak to yourself throughout the day. Observe the mental scenes you replay when no one is around. Are you reliving disappointment? Or are you constructing a new identity? Because every thought either keeps you chained to the past or moves you toward a new reality. The moment you truly release the old story, something powerful happens inside you. Your energy changes. The emotional heaviness begins dissolving. You stop reacting from old wounds. You stop expecting betrayal automatically. You stop searching for signs that history will repeat itself. And for the first time, you become available for something different. Most people want new outcomes while remaining psychologically loyal to old pain. But transformation requires surrender. You must be willing to leave behind the identity that suffered, not because your pain was imaginary, but because you no longer wish to create from it. You are not here to endlessly relive heartbreak. You are here to awaken to your creative power. And the moment you stop worshiping the old version of yourself, reality begins responding to the new one. The old assumptions weaken. The old emotional patterns lose force. New experiences begin entering naturally because your inner state is no longer occupied by fear and memory. You begin moving through life differently, lighter, calmer, more certain of your worth, no longer defined by what happened before, but by what you now choose to believe about yourself and your reality. You must understand that true magnetism is not created through force, manipulation, or chasing. Real attraction begins within your state of being. It is an energy, a silent inner conviction, a certainty so deep that it changes the way people feel in your presence without you needing to say a word. Most people try to become irresistible by changing something outside themselves. They focus on appearance, strategy, timing, or words. But the greatest power you possess is the energy you carry within consciousness. People are always responding to the version of you that you believe yourself to be. If you secretly feel unwanted, people unconsciously mirror hesitation back to you. If you feel insecure, fearful, and emotionally dependent, others sense that pressure even when you try to hide it. But when you become internally fulfilled, confident, and certain of your worth, something extraordinary happens. Your energy changes. Your presence changes. You stop trying to pull love toward you because you begin radiating the feeling of already having it. And that feeling is magnetic. You must become the person who no longer questions whether they are desirable, the person who no longer fears being forgotten, the person who walks through life knowing they leave an emotional imprint on others naturally. That is the energy people cannot resist. Not arrogance, not ego, inner uncertainty. There is a calmness in someone who knows their value. They do not beg for attention because they expect affection naturally. They do not obsess over outcomes because they trust their own power. There is emotional stability within them, and that stability becomes deeply attractive. People are drawn toward energy that feels whole. This is why your inner conversations matter so much. Every day you are either building magnetic energy or weakening it through doubt. If your thoughts constantly say, "Why don't they want me?" you continue embodying rejection. But when your inner world begins saying, I am unforgettable. I am deeply desired. People naturally feel drawn to me. Your entire emotional state begins shifting, and the outer world always responds to state. Do not underestimate the power of emotional self-possession. The moment you stop needing validation, validation begins arriving more freely. The moment you stop fearing abandonment, relationships begin stabilizing. Why? Because you are no longer creating from lack, you are creating from fullness. This is the difference between attraction and pursuit. Pursuit says, please notice me. Attraction says, my energy speaks before I do. You must cultivate the feeling that your specific person already feels connected to you emotionally, not through force, but naturally. Imagine them thinking about you unexpectedly throughout the day. Imagine them feeling your absence when you are not around. Imagine them emotionally pulled toward you without understanding why. That inner assumption changes the way you move through reality. You stop appearing needy. You stop overreacting to temporary circumstances. You stop shrinking yourself emotionally. Instead, you begin embodying warmth, confidence, peace, and emotional power. And people feel that. Never forget this. Others can only meet the version of you that you consistently present within consciousness. If you identify as forgettable, you create forgettable experiences. If you identify as magnetic, meaningful, and deeply valued, reality begins reflecting those qualities back to you through people, conversations, and relationships. The world does not decide your energy. You do. So stop waiting for someone else to convince you that you are special. Stop handing your worth over to temporary circumstances. You must become the source of the love, confidence, and validation you seek. Because when you internally become the experience you desire, you no longer chase it externally. And there is something profoundly powerful about a person who is emotionally complete within themselves. Their presence lingers in the minds of others. Their energy feels comforting yet unforgettable. People think about them without effort. They feel naturally drawn back toward them because authenticity, confidence, and inner peace create a kind of magnetism that cannot be manufactured artificially. When you fully embody the feeling of being loved, valued, and irreplaceable, your specific person begins responding to that version of you automatically. Not because you forced reality to change, but because reality has always been reflecting the energy you consistently choose to embody. After this, your specific person feels you so deeply they can no longer stay away. Neville Goddard inspired. Action hook. They are not ignoring you. They are responding to the version of you you've been believing yourself to be. The moment you change your inner story, everything changes. After this shift, your specific person will feel your energy so deeply, so irresistibly that staying away will no longer feel natural to them. Introduction, 400 characters. What if the love you desire is already yours, waiting only for your assumption to catch up? Neville Goddard taught that imagination creates reality, and the version of you who is already loved, chosen, and unforgettable exists right now. In this video, you'll discover the inner shifts that magnetize your specific person back into your reality with unstoppable emotional force. Script point 1. Stop chasing. Start becoming. The moment you chase, you silently affirm separation. Neville taught that the outer world is only a mirror reflecting your dominant assumptions. So if you constantly wonder where they are, why they haven't texted, or whether they still care, you are feeding the reality of absence. But the power begins when you stop seeking validation from the outside. Become the version of yourself who already feels chosen, already loved, already unforgettable. Because the person who knows they are deeply desired moves differently. They think differently. They radiate certainty, and certainty is magnetic. Your specific person does not respond to desperation. They respond to the energy of inevitability. Point 2. Assume the feeling of being loved. Neville said, feeling is the secret, not wishing, not begging, feeling. So ask yourself, how would you feel if your specific person was already obsessed with you? If they couldn't stop thinking about you? If every song reminded them of you? Live in that emotional state now. Walk with the inner confidence of someone deeply adored. Because imagination is not fantasy. It is creation. The subconscious mind does not know the difference between what is imagined and what is physically real. And what you consistently feel eventually hardens into fact. Point 3. Your Felfun concept controls everything. People do not see you as you are. They see you as you see yourself. If deep inside you believe you are replaceable, abandoned, or hard to love, that assumption gets projected into your relationships. But the moment your self-concept changes, your reality must reorganize itself. Start affirming, I am unforgettable. I am always chosen. I naturally inspire deep love and devotion. The outer world has no choice but to conform to your inner identity. And suddenly, the person who seemed distant begins thinking about you constantly, not because you forced them, but because your energy changed. Point 4. Stop reacting to the crank reality. Most people lose manifestation because they worship appearances. No text, they panic. No movement, they spiral. But Neville warned us never to accept the outer world as final. Reality is delayed evidence of past assumptions. Your job is not to react. Your job is to persist. Even when there's silence, persist. Even when circumstances look impossible, persist. Because the unseen movement is always happening first. And the moment you remain faithful to your new assumption long enough, the outer world bends. Point 5. Imagine them feeling drawn to you. Close your eyes and imagine this. Your specific person lying awake at night thinking about you, feeling your absence, missing your energy, wanting to hear your voice. Neville taught that imagination creates spiritual reality first. So when you repeatedly imagine your person feeling deeply connected to you, you impress that experience onto consciousness. And consciousness is the only reality. Do not imagine from longing. Imagine from ownership, from certainty, from knowing. Because the version of them who cannot stay away already exists. You are simply selecting that reality. Point 6. Let go of the old story. The past only survives if you keep repeating it. Stop telling the story of heartbreak. Stop identifying with rejection. Stop replaying old conversations in your mind. The old version of you created old results, but you are not that person anymore. Now you are the version who is magnetic, cherished, pursued, deeply desired. And when you fully release the old identity, your reality begins shifting faster than you imagined possible. Because manifestation is not about changing them. It is about transforming self. Point 7. Become the energy they cannot resist. Your specific person is not separate from your consciousness. They are responding to the assumptions you persist in. So instead of asking, will they come back? Start declaring, they always feel pulled toward me. They cannot stop thinking about me. Our connection grows stronger every single day. Confidence in imagination creates power in reality. And when your inner world becomes saturated with love, certainty, and emotional conviction, your outer world mirrors it back with precision. That is law, not luck. Listen carefully. The love you desire is not outside of you. It begins within you. The moment you embody the feeling of being deeply loved, chosen, and unforgettable, your reality must respond. Your specific person will feel the shift. They will sense your energy differently. And what once felt distant will begin moving toward you naturally. So tonight, stop doubting, stop chasing, stop waiting, and start becoming the version of yourself who already has the love they desire. Because after this shift, staying away from you will no longer feel possible.